What's up, y'all? I know I've been out for a little bit. I was doing a few shows over at Timcast while I was out of town. I am back. Let me go ahead and thank you all. We're closing in on 1.15 million for the Alpha Core campaign. A lot of you guys have got your books. More are going out. Most of you guys have. We got these CGCs that need to go out as well. It's been some great reviews, man. You guys have been killing it. We appreciate it. We love that you are loving Alpha Core. Chuck Dixon appreciates you, as well as Joe Bennett. So thank you all for that continued support. But today, finally getting around to this. So Mark Waid, well, man, I got to set the scene, I guess. So Mark Miller, legendary writer, he has been a lot more vocal about some issues with the industry. He's talked to some retailers as well on stream. And of course, a lot of the mainstream guys are not happy about it. Watch my previous videos, guys. I've gone through the data. I've talked about how American comic books are on the decline, but I've also talked about the sort of economic turmoil, or it's in a bad economic spot. And to be fair, it's always been this way. And this is why I personally believe why people are so protective of the big dogs when it comes to comic book publishers, because they're not going to make it on the other side in the event that they are eliminated, or let's say they shut down their publication department. So it's good for them to be delusional. Now, he took it to Facebook out all of this, and we're going to go through some of his comments, and I'll give you my perspective. This is what he said. He said, like a fallen star rocketing across the sky, another former comic superstar whose heat is fading. Choose it. By the way, Mark Miller is who he's talking about. Far richer, of course, than Mark Waid. He's been able to capitalize and cash in on a lot of his properties, stuff that he's done on Netflix and so forth. He's one of the few guys in comic books that can call his own shot. Fading chooses to cry for attention by blaming the industry, his peers, and the audience rather than taking stock of his own professional progress, admitting that we are often the authors of our own fate and finding the courage to reinvent himself and stay relevant. So he's looking at it like, or it's not even insinuating, he's basically claiming that Mark is only taking this position because his superstar is fading. And that's why he's taking the position. That doesn't even make any sort of sense, but this is what I'll talk about with the delusion. Now, he goes on to say, my star is not going to burn forever. No one's does, and accepting that fact gracefully is a sign of emotional maturity. But if I ever become that guy, every single one of you has permission to slap me upside the head. Okay, so in the comments, there are other people that are just acknowledging the facts. Some, of course, supporting him and his positions. And the delusions, and others are saying, look, man, what's going on in the industry is real. Retailers are echoing this sentiment, and they're the ones that have to sell these books. This is what he says in response to some of those comments. He says, all this complaint about how comics are dying because familiar characters are being written out of character by people who want to self-insert their own political causes or turn them into SJW mouthpieces. And he's using quotes with all this stuff. But not one single legitimate example given. This is a man, and it's proven when he says something like that, he's just flat out telling you he has not even tried to bother to listen to the arguments or the positions of the people that are on the opposite side of that. Oh, you could just watch my channel back when I did reviews, and I would talk about Ta-Nehisi Coates and all these other writers, the T. Franklins of the world, who are literally putting themselves in the comments. Well, T. Franklin, she'll straight up brag about it and what it is to her position, especially when it comes to like this lesbian stuff. She's all in on that. There are so many examples of this. There's no shortage of it. But when you basically bury your head in the sand and then you gaslight everybody else and basically act as if they're seeing things, or worse, which is what he's doing, and it's saying that we're making it up. There's no examples. Simply not true. Anyway, continuing on, he said all this complaints. I already read that. That's the one that I already read. Here's some other stuff. Someone did bring up Ta-Nehisi Coates. He says that's a bad example. Yada yada yada. This is going into the old politics and comics bit. But there was one other thing that he did say that I for sure wanted to touch on. He says, I think a lot of us would rather see the industry burn down then quote unquote get together with the alt-right. And the alt-right to him is anybody that is echoing the sentiments it is that I just said. So y'all need to understand that he doesn't mean that in literal terms. This is just a buzz term that he's using to describe the people that are in opposition to, or not even in opposition really to anything. It's more of acknowledging the facts of the matter with the industry. He says he called BS on anyone who tries to highlight the issues, gets piled on, because that's what someone said, and that's a fact. That's what's happening to Mark. Delusion. Mark, nobody had any problems with him for the most part. As soon as he just said, look, man, there's an excitement problem in comic books, he backed Glenn O'Leary, that retailer who was saying that, look, man, people don't want you writing yourself into these characters that have long existed. And he backed him. He talked to other retailers. He's simply acknowledging, really mild takes, by the way, acknowledging the reality that is the industry itself, because I believe that he actually cares about it. You see what they're doing to him and what they're saying. You're participating in it, Mark Waid. He said, I think it's far more accurate to say anyone who wants to blame everything on SJW gets piled on, or anyone who wants to complain that their favorite characters are being written as political mouthpieces but can't provide examples. This guy's delusional. This guy's incredibly delusional. Look, I'm going to give it to you straight, as I always do. The comic book industry, and it's not up for dispute, it's not up for debate, in terms of unit sales, compared to years past, decades past, the unit sales have been on a steady decline. That's not my opinion. That is a fact. There was a moment of time a few years ago where you had an absolute explosion in North America with manga, and a lot of folks saw a growth there, and they tried to take credit for it instead of being honest. It's the same industry, but it's different in the sense that that's not coming from the American comic book publishers. That stuff is coming from the other side of the planet, if you will. Okay, so that's not an opinion. That's a fact, and anybody that's honest would simply acknowledge it. But as Mark calls them, the council pigs, and I did a post about this, I want you guys to understand this. And this is, even people that want to see the industry turn around need to accept this as a reality, because it's true. It was built on a house of cards. There's a previous video I did where I went through the history of comics, and I showed you the data. Guys, it's never really been, for the publication side of things, a profitable venture. They always, for the most part, needed, especially DC, really since inception, had to have parent companies that were assisting them. Marvel, the same can be said. It was in your lifetime for a lot of you guys where Marvel almost went under, bankrupt, and they had to get bailed out by Toy Biz, I believe was who it was. Okay? There's a reason why the rights got split up in the first place. It's not been a profitable venture. The direct market never made really any sort of sense. It's just a way that people go through the motions, and it seems like maybe a retailer or two and the distributors are making way more money than the publishers per se. However, they can get away with that because they are connected to mega corporations and therefore can sustain these losses because they have a parent company that is there to bail them out. Now, like I said, with the rights being split, this especially happened with Marvel, in that there were people that saw the executives, which is why they were buying that aspect of it, and that along with TV rights and movies and merchandise, because that was how they knew that they could make money. It was not coming from the actual publication. The actual comic books were not where they were able to make money. I don't believe it's ever really been profitable, and the people that have been able to make money off of it, it's been in pockets. Now, with that being said, most people understand this, and there's been some harsh realities that have had to be accepted by some of these creators that are in this space. It's including ones that have been around for a very long time. They try to do the independent thing. And yeah, people like you when you're tied to Batman or Daredevil or Superman or whoever it may be. But when you try to do your own thing on an original property, you don't see nearly as much money. And oftentimes these guys aren't businessmen anyway, so they don't really even understand how to navigate that. And that's, again, a harsh reality. There's very few people in comic books that can call their own shots. Mark's one of them. You got the Todd McFarlanes of the world, who's been able to make a killing off of toys. In fact, people are going to him to bail him out, like Hasbro, like even DC. You got like Alex Ross, right? He can name his price, but that's few and far between. It's not these, even some of the more prominent writers. It's not them. They can't do that. So you have to be delusional if you're them, because they need this to exist. If Warner woke up tomorrow, which I don't want to say it's realistic, but it's not impossible. If they said, look, the publication department, we're shutting all of this stuff down. That's it. We may license this stuff out, but we're done. We're not making any money, because they are piling up debt, and they may need to start. It doesn't really matter as much when you're making billions upon billions of dollars. It doesn't matter as much when you lose there, but you got to start cutting where you can, and where you are losing when you're in debt and you're not really making any money, and Warner's struggling. But if they woke up tomorrow and they said, look, this stuff is gone, these guys aren't going to make it on the other side. There'll be a couple of them, maybe some artists or two, that will be fine. Most of them aren't. It's effectively Marvel, DC especially, and you can even throw in some of these other bigger publishers in comic books, effectively are the sugar daddy of this industry. Okay? If they cease to exist, these guys aren't going to have a spot there. So they have to be protective of it. They have to be even delusional, because why would you want to face the reality that, look, once this goes away, I have nothing? Nobody wants to face that. That's harsh. But I believe that's more or less what this is, and why they jump down the throat of anybody that dares to say the industry is in decline. There are some problems that plague it. A lot of stuff is going to need to happen in order for it to change, and they get so mad. And a lot of that comes from, again, being protective of their sugar daddy. On the other side is this, and I'll end on this note. They don't want to accept that their ideological enemies were correct. This is why Mark Waid goes out there screaming about the alt-right. Because imagine that for years, these people have been saying the industry's going on the decline, or talking about the stories and the direction it is that they're going. And these folks sat up there and told all these people that they were crazy, called you out of your name, likened you to very, very bad things. And then as the reality sets in even further, and you're starting to see that you can't really, there's no denying that it's going down, okay? Your enemies, the people that you deemed as your ideological enemies, were ahead of it the whole entire time. That in itself is going to make a lot of people mad, and why they would keep up with the delusion, because they'd rather not accept that just possibly their ideological enemies were correct on all of this.